Hi, folks. Larry Rolla here again. I have to tell you, my friends Freddie Hudson, Trade Martin, and Bob Marks, the guys behind the Harness Racing Alumni Show, they put together a bunch of guys that a panel to discuss everything that everybody's been talking about and trying to fix it, trying to find out what's wrong, how to make it work, trying to save it, trying to do everything. This is the panel that he put together. And by the way, if you miss this and you see it later on, or if you want to listen to the alumni show, you could get it. Just go to ustrots.com and click on show. They do a show every Thursday, and every Thursday they have a special guest on, and it's real good, very, very interesting. But I found this one of the most interesting. They got a couple of heavyweights, all heavyweights on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play their show. I'm going to leave this group of guys on, and you can listen to what the show was about. Very, very interesting. After the show, I'm going to come back on. If you have any comments or questions, just post them up. I may look at them while they're talking. But anyway, before I screw it up, I'm a little screwed up today. I had a tough day. But anyway, here it goes.
I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here with Trade Martin and Bob Marks, along with Andy Cohen and his weekly Keep and Pace update. On this week's show, we have assembled an international panel to discuss harness racing. The panel consists of international owner and breeder Gordon Banks, Hall of Fame driver and the CEO of the Hamiltonian Society, John Campbell. From Canada, we have Thoroughbred and Standardbred owner and breeder, the former CEO of Woodbine Entertainment, Clay Horner. From Australia, trainer, driver, owner, the co-host of Trot Vision, and the vice president of the Victorian Trainer and Drivers Association, Steve Cleve. And from New Zealand, Standardbred owner and breeder, Robert Famularo. Welcome to the Harness Racing Alumni Show, gentlemen.
Thank you, Fred. Good. It's great to be here.
Now, Gordon is going to be conducting this, and so I'm switching over to Gordon for him to take over.
Well, I appreciate that, and I wanted to thank everybody for participating, and I have a feeling it might be a little difficult to speak with 6 people on this call at the same time, but we could try. Just to set the stage a little bit, I think the best we can do is try to see if we can, between us, come up with some ideas that can lead to something that moves the industry forward, because it's certainly in a lot of difficulty and at a turning point down under and here in the States. I don't want to set too much of a stage. I want everybody to say whatever it is that they think could be relevant and helpful. And with that, I think I should really open it up. I could say that for me, what I see in the States is a real problem in that you have an industry that doesn't own its product, which really can't make use of its product, which is simulcasting. It has ownership of casinos that wants its demise. It has a product that's deteriorated, and it doesn't really own assets that enable the business to succeed, and has no capability of immediate profitability or even medium-term profitability because of the limited amount of money that it can make on direct racing. So with that, and you have an organization in the USGA that hasn't yet been effective. So it leads to the question of what can North America do to salvage harness racing and to move it forward, given those set of facts. And then in Australia, especially where Stephen is, you have a major problem in Victoria where they've lost a fortune and that's a major point of discussion. And in New Zealand, Robert's going to be able to discuss better the situation there, which is probably more hopeful than all the other jurisdictions, but has its issues as well. So with that, I think I sort of have to open it up to everybody and see where it goes. I think the industry needs this discussion, and there shouldn't be any restrictions on it.
Gordon, it's Clay. I'll just have one observation to start off from my perspective, and maybe people can think about this in terms of whether it resonates with them or not. I'm looking at not specifically Canada, although Woodbine qualifies sort of on the fringes of this. But if I look at the U.S. racing scene and look at the organizations that are successful and have a prospect of being successful, and this is completely consistent with your comment to begin with. So who are they? They're Churchill, which owns its product. There's Stronach, which owns its product but doesn't want to be in the business. There's Naira, and in particular with a crown jewel like Saratoga and the new Belmont, which is a not-for-profit organization, so committed only to the business and with enough scale to own their distribution or control their distribution. And then you have Keeneland on a smaller scale running an elite boutique business, but again, one that everybody has to have and take. So my biggest observation from a business point of view would be to succeed in the long run, it requires that the principal players in the business are people that have an elite quality product and own their own distribution, hopefully with multi assets to sell. Woodbine's fortunate in that regard, and that has both the standardbred and the thoroughbred business. But personally, I think the future of tracks that are solo organizations or operations or loose amalgamation of tracks that are owned by casinos, I would just venture to everybody that within 10 years, all of those will be gone. So the alternative is what can we do and build out of 3 or 4 organizations that have enough prestige, quality of product, and control enough of their distribution to possibly make it in the long term.
Well, all I can say is I agree 100%. But I think everybody else has to you gave them a big mouthful. You and I sometimes discuss these things, John, but I think that's, what does everybody think about that? What do you think, Clay?
That was Clay who said that.
I'm sorry, what do you think, John?
Well, I don't disagree. And the problem we have is any kind of consensus or unity within the game. In my opinion, we don't have a very good business model, and we can't get a unified voice or agreement to change it. We're overexposed. We have tracks that are racing too much. The public has made it clear they want competitive racing with big fields, and we go out of our way not to give them that. And I don't know what the time frame is for that, but there's certainly a finite number at the end of the line here. If we don't, change our business model in regards to dates, the quality of the fields, the size of the fields, because that's what the public wants.
Yeah, Freddie here. I agree with you, John, 100%. We need to start mixing it up a little bit and make the product more attractive. And then once we have the product more attractive, we can start marketing it.
Yes, but then, we still have that problem that of the percentage of the bets that's bet off track now, and the tracks get such a small percent of that. And let's be honest, people are not coming back to the track except on our big events, and that's why we have to put all our effort and resources into making our big events the best they possibly can and expose people in that way. So we still have the problem with the majority of the bets coming in from off track, and the small percent of what the tracks and the horsemen gain from that.
And you're exactly right on that, John. And the problem or the issue to solve is a lot of that is due to the casino companies not having any real interest in it being different from that. And so if you were, to look in a grand way, if you said, okay, let's put together an amalgam of Woodbine, the Meadowlands, the Red Mile when they race, maybe Ohio, although they're tied up with a casino company, and think about whether there's another product that could be a quality product, and say these tracks need to come together as one organization for betting purposes, and coordinate their schedules, coordinate their race programs, coordinate the sharing of big races, and most importantly, do everything they can to have it be our casino, our pari-mutuel network that is going to get the majority of the betting or enough of the betting. So instead of it being 3% at the end of the day, it's never going to go back to being 20. But could we put together that amalgam of players and have enough product of a quality product to allow the tracks to get 12%?
Yeah, Clay, I think that's the key. I think otherwise you're stuck in a situation where the tracks cannot possibly make money. And how a business that can't make money on its direct product can succeed over time and live over time, I don't see it. And the other thing I think is I wonder if one can try to develop sort of a win-win-win situation between the governments, the casinos, and racing, whereby over a period of 5 or 10 years, one's transitioning to a situation where racing is owned by people that want racing to succeed. And the casinos clearly want us out. They're going to do everything they can to push for decoupling. It's inevitable that it's going to come. What if we work with the casinos in the States to let them, at some point, 7, 10 years out, be released from the connection with racing? And in the meantime, what they have to do is move the racing to some sort of much less expensive geographical location in whatever state or province one's in.
Well,
give that asset.
It's
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That, but I think there's another gem of an idea in there, because I think the other long-term threat to racing is the governments will say, particularly in an era where governments are being, cut down or being required to have less operating tenets. Racing's a very easy place for state governments to look at it and say, well, if we're going to do what the federal government in the U.S. is doing, let's start. We'll cut the racing money by half. But if we could go to the states and Ontario in Canada and say, we collectively can do over time with less government money, but we need this transition period, and we need you to be resolute partners of ours in doing that. And part of that is the legislative piece of how we're going to let the casino companies partially off the hook, maybe totally off the hook over time. And we do not have enough negotiating leverage as tracks and horse people to do that, but you do, because they're completely subject to your jurisdiction in that regard. And collectively, coming back to the point, we want to fashion a win-win-win that allows them to get out of what they don't want to do, allow you, government, to ultimately have to put in less collective money, but also gives us the time to chart our own destiny doing this together.
Again, 100% what I think. I'm sorry.
If I can jump in there, exactly what you're saying right now is what we are experiencing in Victoria here in Australia is we did have time. It wasn't used up properly. Our government basically is broke, and they come to us and they said a few years ago that we need to start living within our means. And unfortunately, when the government's showing you lots of grants and everything else, you think it's going to continue on. You know, Daddy's credit card's never going to run out, and the government have basically cut that credit card off from Victoria this year, and we've had massive cuts, and we have no future fund. So we've got nothing to fall back on unless we can organise a deal to sell some land or whatever else. But what you're just saying about having enough time to transition, get yourself into the right position so you do have a future fund to set yourself up going forward and not run into the brick wall that we've run into in Victoria. We're running for stake money now that's lower than what we were racing for back in 2013. You know, we're talking 12 or 13 years ago, we were racing for more money, and it's getting extremely hard to survive down here. There's other states in Australia that are actually doing quite well. So it's not just Australian racing. It's really directed at Victoria, and that's because we were one of the strongest states and we had so much government support. And as soon as that got taken away, we realised we just had nothing built up underneath that government support.
Yeah, but New South Wales, which is very successful, is successful largely because they sold Harold Park for about $200 million or $150 million. And they've been able to subsidize based on that and the income from that. And that's what I was thinking too, to what Clay and I were both discussing, that if it's a win-win, at the end of the day, you want racing to not only have ownership that wants racing to succeed, but you want it to have an underlying real estate asset. And if one can broker a deal where the casinos cooperate in getting racing that underlying land asset in a very inexpensive area that's well chosen, that perhaps in 10 years is worth an awful lot more, it's another backstop for racing. Not just the funding, but the land that it gives racing. There's so many things that can be done, but it requires cooperation between legislature, state government, the ownership of the casino ownership and racing. And to me, the biggest problem is how and who represents racing. How does one move it from? How do you effectuate, Clay, the vision you have? Who would do it?
Well, I think what you do is put together a group of I'll call it the CEOs that are invested in racing, together with John and the Hambletonian Society, and maybe I'd suggest a couple of other people who are just fantastically successful business thinkers. We get more than just our shared history, but we get people who have transformed other industries to work with us in thinking about the way you transform an industry, and we go at that collectively. I mean, again, another incredible example of what you're talking about in terms of saying, capitalize on the value of our real estate and move to a place where we can get the distribution, but at not in a situation where you have to own the land, is Kentucky Downs. I mean, obviously it's a very short meet, but the purses are astronomical, and by definition that means that every wagering facility has to carry that product as the top product of the time. And I that that would be part of all of that, together with getting the governments to invest in it at the outset, and coming up with, again, a reasonable schedule of when our races are going to be on, so we maximize the opportunities for the tracks that are in rotation at any particular time. I'll say probably the biggest thing I've learned during my short time as a thoroughbred owner, when I've been lucky enough to own a couple of great parts of great horse, is one of the great assets the thoroughbred business has, and I'm thinking about Australia and New Zealand in this regard, is the truly international nature of the racing. So I look at it, and someone would say to me, how has your viewership of racing changed from the way it was 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago? I look at it and say, okay, I watch most of my racing on the weekend, but in the summer, a large part of that is watching the English, Irish, and French thoroughbred racing for my thoroughbred content, maybe a little bit of Saratoga. But I would say, just myself, one of the great observations I have of European harness racing and Australasia harness racing is the big fields that you have, because again, if we're going to be a competitive long-term product, we have to have 12 horses on the racetrack, and because for the reasons we all know. But again, we know that means we have to have the purses that make that work for the guys and women that own those horses. But a part of it that I think we could do better at is incorporating Australasian racing into the North American calendar and educating our clients about that, and vice versa, and maybe a little of it from France. I mean, I historically watched the Prix d'Amérique every year. That'd be the only race I'd watch, and I still don't watch a great deal. But I can tell you, I just marvel when I watch a race at Vincennes, an overnight race where there are 15 trotters and they trot 3 wide the whole way. Let's face it, it's 10 times more interesting.
That's true.
Is it interesting, or is it puntable?
And puntable. I mean, in business terms, puntable more importantly, but it's also interesting.
But one of the difficulties there, Steve, I also have thought for a long time there should be much more Australian racing here. And one of the former heads of Victorian Racing, and we were trying to work together on introducing it here in the States in an intelligent fashion, where programs would be available to North Americans in a fashion that we could understand. Because most Americans, if they look at your form, wouldn't know what they're looking at. So if you're going to have a product designed for the U.S. market, it has to be intelligently designed with proper commentary, with right programs. But if it were done well, it would also be a tremendous financial asset to Victoria. And yet they never do it.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I know they did it in COVID times. We had some morning meets where we were sending out the broadcast to America, and we've also had some late trot meets where we were broadcasting into Europe as well. But I agree. If I look at your cards, I sit there and go, well, I don't know what I'm looking at, sort of thing. So it's something where if you are going to beam your product into another country, you have to give them an A1 product that they can bet confidently into and understand exactly what they're looking at.
Because I'll make an observation. The final race of the drivers' tournament in Australia this past weekend, and a couple of weeks ago, your big race down there. I mean, those 2 races would be in the top 10 quality races I've seen all year, and I'm including the thoroughbred races I've watched this year. I mean, they were fantastic races.
And Clay, there's another thing. Trot's TV does it still exist, Steve? I know they cut it back.
No. Yeah, it does the live vision, but it doesn't have the hosting of what it used to have. It just has some parade ring interviews, and that's it.
But Clay, when they had Trot's TV going full steam about 2 years ago, it was without a doubt the best live production of racing you've ever seen. You could sit there and you could watch every race over 5 hours, which you need to do down under, because they race every 30 minutes. You're about ready to shoot yourself.
Right.
But it was an incredible production. there's a big market even for us going. It's reciprocal. We should be doing more internationally as well.
It was heartbreaking when they cut that. I worked as a host, co-host, and whatnot on Trots Vision for probably nearly 3 years, and I absolutely loved it. I used to do the pre-race interviews, do the form, your tipping and all that as well, but also help bring the knowledge of a trainer, driver, owner, breeder sort of thing to the viewers that they wouldn't get just from watching a few guys that are just there for the tipping side of thing. It sort of brought that other dimension to it. And I believe Trots Vision was one of our biggest selling points. And, I know cost cutting has to happen, but, when you're cutting back something that's actually promoting your business to drive income, you're almost like it's shooting yourself in the foot. So I know for one, I was shattered, not just because I'm no longer doing it, but I thought that it was one of our greatest assets that we unfortunately did just cut back to bare basics.
Yeah, we essentially need a TVG for harness racing.
Yes. But the problem is, I know John, when I speak to John, he always comes back to the same point, which is that it's almost impossible in this country to get the many differing segments of the industry to cooperate in anything. And when you talk about races with 12 or 14 horses, the drivers don't want it. When you talk about something else, there's always some segment that doesn't want something, and there's no unifying force to effectuate anything.
I agree with that, but I will say, going back to sort of a comment I made before, which we all agreed to, and I don't mean that they have the ideas or would be the thinkers, but once we involve the government in putting something together that is ultimately a win from their point of view in exchange for them continuing to provide us with significant money, we then have someone that actually does have the whip hand in terms of saying, guys, I know you drivers don't want to do it, but for us to continue doing this, it has to be more successful financially. And we've been convinced by people that is one element of making it more successful financially. So tracks and horse people don't have a veto on it. They've got a voice. But ultimately, as in any other business, the people who are putting up the money ultimately make the call on the hard things at the end of the day, with a lot of education from the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, the job of creating a business plan that makes sense and they can convince government and casinos that they can get what they want and leave a business that won't come back to them 3 years later. That's one of the most important things that one can do.
Yeah, and I'm going to make another comment here, just which I think is really quite important. To make this work for harness racing over the next 5 years, we have to have John Campbell be our leader in doing this because of his reputation, his integrity, the fact that everybody knows him. I'm just reflecting on the hockey series that just went on, internationally, and I know that having, I'll just take an example. That was a ceremonial role, but John's would be a substantive role. But having Mario Lemieux at the hockey game in Montreal meant way more than Mario Lemieux being at the hockey game in Montreal. It was investing the whole thing with the people that people respect the most. And so when it comes to compromises, in addition to the very financial oriented people that are part of compromises, you need somebody that everybody respects to be kind of the broker in making the thing go down. This is just a little example. It's for North Americans to watch, but I was watching it this morning. One of our sons had me watch it. There's a little clip that the NHL has done from a promotional point of view. The most interesting part of that, because we've all seen the games before, are the two coaches talking to their teams in the dressing room, between periods, but in particularly prior to the overtime. And I guess that was just saying nobody has John's credibility with everybody like John has, and we need the business guys to have John there as part of being the honest broker and the guy that brings up the elements of our tradition that we need to be mindful of. But most importantly, have John being the guy who says on behalf of the guys that are actually involved in the industry, guys, we have to do this.
Yeah,
Well, John,
Yeah.
it's all up to you now.
I appreciate the kind words, Clay, and all that, but and I'm not trying to be a pessimist here at all, but I just think back what happened in Victoria, and I'm thinking if you brought a contingent over here from Victoria and explained exactly what happened there to the majority of our organizations or entities that are control these money in the various states and provinces, it would just go in one ear and out, one out the other. And the daddy's credit card never running out is a great analogy. They don't think it will. And I don't know how you ever convince them that will happen.
I think that you're right, John. That's so important. But I guess I would say, not that I'm the voice that's going to say it or would have the credibility to say it, I would say based on all of my, 45 years in the business community doing deals and watching our industry, I know the credit card's going to disappear because it's so alluring to the governments to have the credit card disappear and to put it bluntly, for all the incredible advantages of Kentucky's made it easy for the credit card to disappear everywhere else. And so we need our guys to understand that it'll be at a different rate. And that's a really hard thing to manage because, if you think you've got 8 years rather than 4, your view is a different one. But to help them understand that it is going to run out and we can't put ourselves in the Victoria position of looking for a solution after the game's over. But I know it's an unbelievably hard job. I mean, it just is an unbelievably hard job. I mean, in a crazy way, it's kind of the kind of thing you need the governments to threaten before people get the message. But I think about Ontario, where we were so lucky to get a 20-year deal, which is pretty incredible. I think the governments are going to live up to that. But I'll say no, not because anybody said to me. I know that the renewal of the deal isn't going to be the deal that we got 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, I cannot convince people of that in any way, shape, or form. There's a line in a Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry movie, a man's got to know his limitations, and I know mine in that regard.
And so, John, where would you say the most resistance is? I don't mean individuals, but what element of the business has the greatest resistance?
It'd be the state Horsemen's Association would be the, and so there's no organization for racetracks,
right?
So that's where you'd run into resistance because horsemen, by and large, will trade racing dates for purses anytime. They historically have done it, and Maryland has actually changed their approach with their new reorganization, what everything is going on there, and that was a really positive article about that they are cutting dates, and the Horsemen's Association realizes that, but that's a unique stance for horsemen's organizations. They want racing dates, and
I know.
But John, what you're saying, you're saying you can't convince horsemen that the gravy train is going to end.
No,
but
I don't think anybody can. I don't think anybody
can. Well, given if you think that, how can one possibly avoid a disastrous end? Because the gravy train will end. No business survives when it's losing money this way, and when it's owned by people who want its extinction. And the casinos know that with their money, that it's just a matter of time. Whether it's 4 years or 5 years or 8 years, they're going to get decoupling, and then the racing is going to be diminished, if not destroyed. What of that picture do Horsemen not understand?
That it hasn't happened yet.
Just a question on that. With us, let's talk about Victoria here. We are covered by Harness Racing Victoria, and they put out an annual report every year. So we have it in black and white, and I've got just the last few years sitting right in front of me now that I can reel off. And we ran last year at a loss of $25.8 million. That was the Harness Racing Victoria's net profit loss. And then with government grants and everything else to cover that, to try and bring us back out in the black. So we have it in black and white. We're running at a $25 million loss. The previous year, $22 million loss. The prior year, $9 million loss, and so on and so on. So we have to believe it because we can see it in black and white. I'm not sure your states or tracks and that are set up. You obviously don't have stuff like this where it is in black and white to show exactly where the government's kicking in a certain amount of money that once it dries up, then all of a sudden we could run HRV with 0 staff and still run at a loss. It's showing that our business model at the moment is just not functionable without the government support. Surely your Horsemen, if they saw reports like that, would have to open up their eyes and believe it.
Yeah, I guess so. I'd say that I agree with that national people would do, but we're all hopers. But I mean, to me, the most telling part of all, but I also know, I write it all the time and I get very little reaction. You just need to look at the front page of the USTA racing page, which I look at every day for, entries or results, and it tells you where the wagering is this year relative to where it was last year. And there's been some weather this year, but in aggregate, the wagering is down 13.5% year to date. The number of dates is down 8%, so it's really 8%, but it was 7% last year. So in the last 2 years, we're on track to have lost 50% of our wagering, and if you project that out, you need only go another 5 years to, in effect, say our wagering is going to be half of what it was 2 years ago. And you just look at that and say, if you're wagering, even if you're not making any money on it, declines to that level, how do the governments not say, guys, we just, at best, we'll only cut you that percentage that your own business is going down, and you then look at that and in effect say, coming back to John's point, your only solution on your own at that point is to in effect say, we will agree to drastically slash dates to keep our base purse at a level that makes it worthwhile driving to the track. But I think we're all talking about a very, very difficult problem, which is how do you get John on it when he stopped me from being a Pollyanna in terms of saying how do you actually convince people that it is going to run out if we don't change, and don't wait till you're looking over the cliff, because it's going to be hard for you to decide to become a medical doctor at that point.
You know what happens,
worldwide problem because our turnover is down 14.9% for last year, so we're on the same levels as you.
Yeah.
But I think, Steve, and this could maybe get Robert into it also for New Zealand, but it seems to me that the problem is the same everywhere in that the truth and the effect, and I guess the cause of this problem of the diminishing wagering and the decline of racing is not a story that the people in the industry are hearing every day from those that are leading the industry. You just had a sale in New Zealand that got promoted as a tremendous sale, and it had the highest sale topper in New Zealand history. But if you had a lower level or mid-level horse, you got crucified.
Yeah.
And you also had in a country that it's unlikely you could have more than $300,000 or $400,000 winners in New Zealand for a 2-year-old, for example. They had, Robert, you would know exactly, but they probably had 30 horses sell for $100,000. There's no awareness, no conscious awareness of the cliff, and you're just not having anybody point out the reality that you have to make a drastic change to come up with a program that has any potential. And people don't hear that enough.
Yeah, part of the explanation for that is because that's true everywhere. I mean, there still will be, for quite a period of time, enough guys with enough money to buy the best horses, or what they think are the best
100%.
horses. But that doesn't solve the overall problem for the industry. I mean, yes, it solves the problem or it mitigates the problem for the very top-end breeders. It's tough on the lower-end breeders, but it doesn't solve the problem of, which I think is the ultimate problem, which is between the casinos, but more importantly, the government saying, unless you guys can give us a credible plan, we have to cut back. And when you cry, our answer is, well, go race in Kentucky. That seems to be a good place for you.
Yeah. What do you have to say, Robert, about New Zealand after you've heard all the points about North America and Australia?
Well, I think, gentlemen, we're a little bit different than all these other jurisdictions. I mean, to be fair, our totalizer turnover this year currently is tracking ahead of last year, which I think tracked ahead of the previous year, only probably in that 3 to 4%, but it is positive. Obviously, for us, the major change, positive change, was the taking over of our TAB, Totalizer Agency Board, 50% by Entain / Ladbrokes. And they've reinvigorated the whole betting environment in New Zealand, and that's led to increased revenue into the industry. So from our point of view, and the deal we have is just a year and a half into a 5-year deal. So, I mean, our stakes went up, I think, another 10 million last year, and will probably go up a little bit more than that this year. So all of that is incredibly positive. I mean, we're a country of 5.5 million, and the South Island has a population of 1.5 million, and probably more than 50% of all our racing product is in the South Island. And a little bit like Australia, we've been brought up on a culture of rugby, racing, and beer. So in New Zealand, I mean, racing is quite, maybe not so much in the younger generation, but certainly in the middle-aged and older generation, racing is it's just part of your DNA. Our real problem is the fact that our industry has been run by our clubs, and really, in terms of that, we've been going backwards. We've got some really good assets and racetracks, but they're run by clubs which are really amateur at the best. And we've just had a big change in our governance at HRNZ, and our real worry is that from an administration point of view, we don't get our act together in terms of how we run our assets that are our tracks and the entertainment product. So on one half, we're in a very positive space. Another half, we just, and it's our own fault. It's nobody else's fault. And to that point, our latest breeding season, we'll see our numbers drop by about 20%. So it's quite, it's an enigma in a way, and in terms of so much positivity, but down in the grassroots, we just seem to be losing our core people. We're like we've got an aeroplane where business class and first class are full, but economy class is empty.
What did Entain do to make it so much better?
Well, I mean, it's easy when you take over from someone who was not very good, and our previous TAB was semi-government-run operation. This is a private-run, well-operated here. They know how to market, they know the product, and they're a business.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we need some business people involved, because you're right. That always makes things better. But again, if we could we should do the same with the idea of putting our best assets and states together, and then agreeing on a wagering operator or professional organization that, as far as their involvement in our business, is totally committed to maximizing the financial returns of the business.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees with that. Getting it done is the problem.
Yeah. Well, no, we have to get everyone together first, right?
Yeah.
I guess, can I just add one thing? When I listen to you gentlemen talk about, the states particularly, and that so much of it seems to be an external problem regarding casinos or government departments. In New Zealand, we don't have that problem. Our problems, lucky for us, are all internal. Is we're sitting on something that can go forward and is going forward. We just don't have the right people in the bridge of the ship to make sure we take it to where it needs to go. So it's an internal issue.
Yeah, in that regard, you're quite lucky.
Oh, very much so. We've just got to stage a mutiny and get rid of the captain and the crew.
All right, gentlemen, we are moving to the 1 hour point. So we'll just wrap it up in 5 minutes. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. On my behalf, I just wanted to thank everybody, especially I know Clay. It was very busy in Canada. John also, and I think hopefully that what everybody's been saying will get heard by the industry, and that perhaps one could find a way to achieve what Clay is pushing for. It requires the right people and the right spirit, and it is the right solution if it can be achieved. But again, thank you to John, to Clay, to Steve, and to Robert, and to you, Freddie, for putting it together. And perhaps there could be some follow-up later, but it's a nice start.
One thing that I'm going to add is I've never seen a business plan done for our sport. Maybe we should get together and start working on a business plan for the whole sport. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that would be a really good start. And I really agree with everything that Clay has said about the future, and certainly how precarious our situation is. But boy, it's tough to get everybody on the same page. It's even tough to get everybody to acknowledge that this isn't going to last forever, and that therein lies the problem.
Although what Clay is saying, and what I'm trying to suggest too, I think Clay and I are sort of on the same path, is if you do come up with a good plan and you do structure for the long term, that the long term can be there. But you need independence, you need control of the product, you need a good product, and you need unity of mass so you can control your own destiny.
Can I just add one thing? In 2026, next year, the World Trotting Organisation is going to be at their conferences in New Zealand. It seems in previous ones it's been just a junket for everyone. Why can't something like that be the basis for going forward?
You bring up a great point. I was actually at the World Trotting Conference in Germany, the last one they had, and spoke there. I think that is the most underutilized organization in the world for harness racing. They've got the leaders from the United States, Canada, down under, Europe, and all of them put on great events, and to have them not sharing that information of what works, what doesn't work, I couldn't agree more that organization, they have to follow through more in between meetings than what they do. That's part of the problem. They meet every 3 years and then it just falls through the cracks and nothing really gets followed through. But I just think that's an organization that could really move harness racing forward, in the future. But again, I'm not involved with it, but I would like to see them take a more active role.
Okay.
Just before I sign off, to throw towards John's point about getting people to understand, I think you guys maybe need to use Victoria as a little bit of a proving point to your people, is that we were one of the best states, one of the biggest states when it comes to the racing, and sort of, probably equal number one or always number one for a long, long time. And we are now the bottom dwellers of Australian racing. There's no ifs or buts about that. We are really well below the other major states. And if they don't think it can happen, just point them towards us. They'll say it can happen, and it has happened here. And we are a long way out of trying to dig out of this hole. We're not going to see much change in the next 3 to 5 years before we start seeing a little bit of daylight.
Okay. With that, I'm going to close the show out.
Not yet. Since nobody has asked the ancient handicapper, what do you want? Basically, what I would want is pickable winners. I want a race where I can handicap the race, and I know everybody in there is going all out. Or if they're not, I know why they're not. Because, well, he's prepping for this or prepping for that. You're asking me to bet my money. Well, if you want me to do that, you got to give me a good reason to do it. Years back, we had good reasons. Unfortunately, there's so much else going on for the competition of the wagering dollar, especially with sports wagering. All you have to do is listen to any radio station, and all they're talking about is, well, you can bet this, you can bet that, DraftKings, FanDuel, etc. No, we need bettable racing. Don't give me 15 horses in a goddamn race, because I wouldn't even think about looking at it. I can't even begin to figure out, well, who might be first, who might be second at the first quarter. I want pickable winners, sensible races, 10 horses on a big track, 8 horses on a small track. That's fine. Okay.
Okay. With that, I'm going to close the show out. Gordon, I want to thank you for bringing everyone together. I personally thank John for joining us, Clay, Robert, and Steve, and Bob. I think we all did a great job here, and we can take it from there.
It was fun, guys.
Thanks. It was fun.
Look forward to doing it again.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap for this. That's a wrap for this week's show. Thanks for listening, and please join us again next week.
Okay. You heard it from 6 of the best. And I still, what I got out of that was that the 6 guys that they put together should have been in power 50 years ago, and none of this would have happened. They're telling me that if you pass out and your brain don't get any oxygen for 7 minutes, you become brain dead. Well, they're at the 6-minute mark, and I'm not sure if they're going to make it, because every idea that they had, from they need a real good businessman involved. A real good businessman would never get involved in harness racing. I hope, I forget who it was that asked John, because of his reputation, which is a stellar reputation, to take the lead and bring in a hockey player or anybody, or even John's reputation. It's not going to work, and don't put him in that spot. He has a reputation, a Hall of Famer, everything he ever did, hard work. Don't put it on him. This is a losing situation. Everybody hopes that it works out, but don't put it on John. Let John, whenever he decides to retire, let him retire with everything that he earned. And he said it right with that quote from a movie, "Know your limitations." And he was smart, because the family living in a tack room in Monticello racing for a 3,000 claimer, he didn't want to hear nothing. And everybody, and I had a little experience with like Stronach. The daughter don't want the business. They're selling all the racetracks. It's just a losing proposition. And then they say, well, limit the racing days. How are the horsemen going to make it if you limit racing days? Then limit racetracks. How's people that live in New York, New Jersey area, Pennsylvania, Delaware, where are they going to race? Where them poor people in Florida? It's just a big mess that in my opinion went too far. And it's to me, I hope it works. That's why I asked Freddie if I could play this, so maybe it could reach a lot more people, and maybe some business people or some very wealthy people. But I forgot who said this, that the way to save this whole thing is you need control. You need, I can tell you this, Larry Kadish, who was my owner at the time in 1980, 79, 80, 81, he put in the largest bid to buy Roosevelt Raceway. Madison Square Garden owned Roosevelt Raceway. Sonny Werblin made the deal. Sonny Werblin should have given Larry Kadish the racetrack, because he was the highest bidder. But there was so much politics and so much going on behind the scenes, and money and envelopes passing back and forth and back and forth. But had Larry Kadish bought that track, it'd still be racing. And that's what you need. You needed an owner like Larry Kadish, who would have kept that a racetrack and supported the racetrack and got other people involved. And it didn't happen. And I really believe, I mentioned this to John when the year he retired. I mentioned it to John Campbell, and he was polite enough not to say, "What are you, fucking nuts?" He didn't say that. He just says, I don't think that's a good idea. And here's my idea. You need participation. The only way you're going to get people in the grandstand is participation. If you built a Ferris wheel or a roller coaster in the middle of nowhere, people will find it and it'll be packed every night. There'd be a line for miles waiting for a ride. It's just bumper cars. But build an arena with bumper cars, and they have them, and they're packed all the time. This is what I mentioned to John. The jog carts that we use, the 2-seaters, have 1 or 2 races a day where you pick maybe 20 people from the audience and have 2 races or 3 races a night, and have whoever wins and do this every night. Whoever wins the draw gets to put on a set of colors, a helmet, and sit in the jog cart with a driver in a parimutuel race. Now, if you want to make it non-betting race, make it non-betting, whatever. But you got to get people into the grandstands. You got to get. You go to the racetrack now. The youngest guy shows up in a wheelchair. You're not going to get these kids. They back then, and I said this a million times, they didn't have casinos, they didn't have the lottery, they didn't have legal sports, they have all of that now. And the people in charge let this get to like I said before, it's approaching 7 minutes. It's brain dead, and what I heard today, with 6 of the smartest people in key positions, really had no answers. The answer was try to convince the government. You're not convincing. First of all, the government is, I don't want to say corrupt, but corrupt. And it's, why do you think the thoroughbreds will always last? Why do you think I don't want to get into that. But anyway, I just hope they don't put it all on John, because he's like the Stanley Dancer and Billy Houghton of today, and don't let him go down and smoke trying to fix something that. And what Freddie said, put together a business plan. John agreed with it, but probably that was because he had to answer the question. But what kind of business plan? I mean, what kind of business plan you're going to create? And don't forget, when you try to create something that's going to save the industry, what about this? You're gonna wind up. You almost have to eliminate the smaller tracks. It becomes a major problem. But maybe these same guys will get together and figure it out. I hope they do, because there's I know that a lot of people got hurt when Freehold closed. It was sad. And in New Jersey, it's just from having the best racetrack in the world. Well, I won't get into that. Anyway, let me see if there's any comments here. There's 34 comments. Let's see if I can answer any of these, or if they're just hellos. Okay, let's see. Good day, Larry. Do you know any details of the Whitey Bulger race fixing at Pocono in the 70s? I think the driver he paid off was Bill Lambertus. Yeah, I know a lot about it, and I hate how do I answer this? Just coming off of this. Look, my life story is out there. The book's out there. My whole life is out there. The guy who went to these guys up there and paid them off was Tony Schuler. Tony Schuler was my partner, so I'm well aware of that, and that's as far as I'll go with that. Okay, hello everyone. Oh, and there she is again. Angel. Hi, Angel. Tom. Hi, Larry. We were all wishing you success and to beat the devil health problem. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tom. Hey, Larry. God bless you. Best of health for years to come. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Oh, just so you know, I might as well tell everybody, because everybody's calling me. I go in tomorrow for the hookup. They're going to hook me back up tomorrow. And attach all the plumbing And I just want everybody to know that I've been on ivermectin and 2 other parasite-killing drugs that complement the ivermectin for the last 2 weeks. They asked me to stop because of this procedure. I'm having it done tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. So they asked me to stop taking it, but that's when I'm taking it. And I will just say this: the reason I chose ivermectin is because it has 100% cure rate, and chemotherapy has a 95% failure rate. I'm not going to get into that, but anyway, thank you all. David, the young generation wants nothing to do with harness racing, no real future in it. I think you're right. Eric, you don't have any sport if you don't care about the fans. Example here at Woodbine on Pegasus Day in Florida, Woodbine charged $10, $20 to sit and watch simulcast race. I really believe if you announced that 30, let's say 30 guests a night will have a chance to ride in a real horse race at the Meadowlands. You come in, you give your name. An hour later, they draw. They pick out 20 or 30 guys, depending on 2 or 3 races, and you just put a helmet on them. Naturally, you sign all the papers you need to sign. The same thing you would do, I guess, or the same insurance you would have if you had a roller coaster. But I think that participation, bringing these kids, because I believe that racetrack, whichever racetrack does it, if the Meadowlands ever did it, they'd have 20,000 kids there. I really believe that. And what would it hurt? What would it hurt to try it one night? Just one night. Try it. Get whatever insurance you need to get, and just try it one night, just for 2 weeks. Advertise in all the newspapers and wherever you have to advertise. 30 lucky patrons tonight will ride in an actual horse race, and after the race, the winner will get a trophy, and all participants will get a film of the race, and I think it'd work. I mean, it sounds stupid and silly, but I think it'd work, because if somebody said, and they were all trying today, all 6 of them trying to get people in the grandstand. I mean, there's more people when you go to the Meadowlands now. There's more people in that FanDuel sports betting thing than there is betting watching harness racing. It's a joke, but let somebody just come up with an idea, and the idea is to get people in the grandstands, get the handle up. How do you do it other than what I said? Just let somebody mention something that was. I know that years ago when I had Aaron Wagman is an owner. He made a deal with Steinbrenner, and they were giving away Yankee hats, and you couldn't get in the stadium. Just giveaways, give some participation. Let these kids, and then you'll get more people involved in harness racing just by getting them there. You got to get them there. Maybe you can get them there saying free banana splits. I don't know, but I know you'll get them there if you say you're going to ride in a real horse race. But we'll see. Okay, I totally disagree with betting races with 15 horses in harness racing when they will just stack 3 wide. Not exciting. I kind of agree. Okay. Freddie Hudson. Eric, at the end of the show, Bob Marks makes a statement that agrees with you. Well, Freddie, I agree with him too, because, 10 horses on a big track is okay. I watch the races from Australia. My friend sends them over to me. and sometimes they have 12, 15, 20 horses in a race, and these things are 2 and 3 wide the whole mile. I mean, if you're the favorite, because I watched that horse, that famous horse, that real good horse, Leap to Fame. If he draws inside right as soon as the gate opens, his main move is to get outside, get in the middle of the track and just stay clear. I agree with Bob. He's 100% right, and that's another reason why racing is in the shape that it's in today. But I think the main reason is it's because of poor management. For the last 30, 40 years, they made the racing and all the rules and everything written by people who were political appointees that never been to a racetrack. I get a kick out of it now. They're looking to make my movie, my TV series, and out of the heavyweight people from Nicholas Pileggi to the head guy at Sony Pictures, to Village Roadshow, to all the people that I met, never been to a harness track. When I say, yeah, we made we boxed 4 horses, what's that? So maybe the ship left the port. Okay, John, horse racing is dead here in Illinois. At one time we had 5 tracks in Chicago and we are down to 1. Yeah. I remember at the back of the program, I think they were like 150 racetracks. Fred, this is from Eric. Fred, I live in Canada now, born and raised in Pennsylvania. Woodbine and especially Mohawk don't care about the fans. During the day at Mohawk, there is no simulcasting, only the casino is open. I feel bad for Freddie. Freddie been fighting. You guys have no idea how hard Freddie Hudson been fighting to keep this game alive for years on his own dime in Washington, every day, lobbying on his own dime. Okay, Tom Kopp, as a fan, I would rather watch races where horses are 3 wide instead of single file. Tom Kopp. Let me see now. I would rather watch. Well, the last time I saw a race that was single file was when Huey Bell was on top in 1959 at Yonkers Racetrack. And then all of a sudden, all the young kids come, and Insco came, and Insco started the 3/8 pole move, and then Lucian with the 5/8 pole move. So there's no more single file races. In fact, there's probably more races that are 3 wide than I can't even remember in the last 50 years one race that was single file. They might have been single file, maybe to the 3/4 pole, maybe, if that's what you're talking about. But I guess you have a point. Angel again. This is correct, John. It sucks in Illinois. Yeah. Tom the Cop. I don't understand how tracks are going to draw people into bet at a track when post time is 2:30 in the afternoon on weekdays and doing away with weekend racing. Another good point. David, we are dinosaurs trying to avoid. So our generation, harness racing was golden. Now it's rated as and dead. Rusted. Eric again. What doesn't help is buffoons like Michael Wilbon, who even gets irritated when Kentucky Derbies run and he calls it hokey pokey. Where is Joe? Hope he is not waiting by his mailbox for that 20% from the fraud. Don't hold your breath, Joe. Hope you feel better. Larry, God bless you. Okay. Eric, what doesn't help racing is clowns like Michael Wilbur. Okay. 2 in a row from Christos and from Eric. Come on, Christos, I need my check from the Eric, what's bad for racing is clowns like Mike. Okay, we went through that already. Freddie Hudson, just so everybody knows, this show is 52 minutes. Freddie, you did a great job putting these guys together. I don't know. I know that you mentioned that somebody mentioned let's do it again, but I don't know. I think you reached the end of everybody's ideas to help. And John probably said it the best, that they just don't stick together. That's F. Lee Bailey said that 60 years ago when he walked out, when the Horsemen hired him. They don't stick together. You can't get anything done. So leave John alone. Let him keep doing what he's doing with the Hamiltonian Society, and don't put him in a spot where just because he is who he is, it's an impossible task. Or at least if you put him in charge, give him a very strong supporting team behind him. David says, thanks, Fred. David, you're welcome. These guys are ahead of me with these things. Oh, I missed Saturday night at the Meadowlands. 25,000 people or so had to get up to bet with 20 minutes. Yeah, I remember. At Monticello, too. I showed some of them pictures at Freehold, the Winter Circle pictures, and the place was packed. 15,000, 20,000 people every single night. It's not like that. And the decline started with the lottery and the casinos and all of that. But if these 6 guys that were on there tonight were in charge back then, they would have figured something out. It wouldn't be the way it is today. They bring them on too late, in my opinion. I hope they're successful. Great show. Thanks, David. Brings back memories. Yeah. Eric, thanks, Fred. You were so right. Give me a race I can handicap and win. Yeah. That was Bob. True. Freddie Hudson. Larry, thanks for posting today's show. Others would not. See, that just goes to prove so that John Campbell is right when he says you can't even. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Oh boy. I know one thing for sure. If Sonny Wordman would have gave the track to Larry Kadish, who offered more money than when he sold it to the developers, Roosevelt Raceway would still be racing. Too much politics. Not only is politics and everything, it's really the way of life. And I went through this very early on in all my early podcasts. It's who you know and how much money you have, and that gets 90% of what you want done. Okay, David, the downfall started, in my opinion, with the closing of Roosevelt Raceway. Probably right. Freddie Hudson at David, July 1977, when George Morton. Yeah, that might be it too. George Morton Levy. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have been in the game, because when I finally got my license, I applied for stalls in New York, and I just got my license. I had a provisional license and no drives with a provisional license. I came down from Buffalo. Gordon Verhurst gave me my provisional license. And I applied for stalls. I didn't get them. And that's when I made the phone call. And you guys have read my book and heard the podcast early on. My mother worked for Tommy Lucchese and Tommy Three Finger Brown. And he made one phone call to George Morton Levy, and I got all the stalls I wanted. And the reason was George Morton Levy was an attorney for all the mobsters. He was Frank Costello and a bunch of them. He was their attorney. He was a mob attorney. Okay. Yeah, Fred. Eric again. David. For me, living in Philadelphia, it was Brandywine Liberty Bell closing. Yeah. Okay, we're almost at the end, folks. Then we can go to sleep. David, oh man, I love Liberty Bell. Larry, John is so smart. He'd never let himself get taken down, saving a swimmer who already has drowned. Yeah, very good, David. Very good. Prayers sent to Larry. Thank you, Freddie. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Awesome show, Larry. Thanks, Gary. Freddie Hudson. We have a part 2 next week. Okay, Freddie, you know one thing. Anything I can do to help you or anybody else in harness racing, all you got to do is call. You have my number. Whatever you want me to do, whatever you ask me to do, consider it done. Monticello is stupid. Also, race day during the week. No Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays. God bless you, Larry. Thank you, Eric. Okay, folks, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I'll see you next week. I'll see you next Thursday. And if Freddie wants to put any more of his shows on, we can do whatever he wants. We'll do it another day. We'll do it on a Wednesday, and then we'll do my crazy show on a Thursday. But right after this operation, I'm going to start paying more attention, because I've been going through. It was tough for me to make plans, So after tomorrow, everything will be fine. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Thank you very much. See you around, and let me play. I'm going to end it with my favorite song.
Dump those grudges, ditch those judges. They're just weighing you down. Drop the haters, procrastinators, 'cause one man's smile is just another one's frown. When it's time for the end, ain't no warning, my friend. One day you're here, next stop the pearly gates. So listen close to what I'm saying. Lighten up, it's getting late. Dump collections, self-reflections, they're just covered in dust. Why obsess, worry, or stress? Just ask yourself, what's the fuss? When your doctor calls you on a Sunday afternoon, Gonna be a blue Monday, you'll be howling at the moon. You know you never can cheat fate. Lighten up, it's getting late. Forget bling and glitter, text and Twitter. Don't need it to make my case. Say it old school, face to face. I dump the users, soul abusers, turn and walk away. Give yourself a kick in the ass, then raise your glass. Let's toast to the past and make the most of today. Keep the faith, rise above, do the things that you love. Find a reason every day to celebrate. So listen close to what I'm saying. Lighten up, it's getting late. Live it full, life goes fast. You're carrying around too much dead weight. All the simple things are all that matter. Lighten up, it's getting late. Oh, what the hell? IGL. Oh, lighten up, it's getting late.
Good night, folks.